I was in the finals round for my weight class. I was fighting at welterweight.
Here is what you deserve. Here's what that leads to: destruction. And you will be humbled. You will be cut down.
It was the third round, and I was getting it handed to me. I'd eaten probably 30 knees to the head at this point in the clinch.
So, welcome to Warforged Men. This is our goal in 2026 is to try to bring a bunch of different men on here, get their different takes, ask some very vital questions that I believe would be necessary information to pass on to men that may reach our video and have some questions that they need answered, some concerns, or are going through trouble in their own lives. For everybody that doesn't know you, this is my friend Barrett. We worked together for a long time whenever we were both teenagers at Chick-fil-A, and now we have made it quite a bit farther in life, and I couldn't help but bring him on here, have him answer a couple of these very important questions. And if you'd like to take this time to go ahead and introduce yourself, you can do that.
Yes, sir. My name is Barrett Rainey. I attend Middle Tennessee State University. I'm studying mechatronics engineering. I'm actually the president of our Muay Thai kickboxing team. I've served that role since May of this year. I was formerly the treasurer, so a little bit of business aspect to that. Obviously, running a organization with a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, especially with competitions and things like that. I do compete myself. I've done Muay Thai specifically since August 2024 with other martial arts coming before that, boxing, MMA. I do IKF, which is International Kickboxing Federation tournaments. I fight tournaments often, try to keep myself active in the ring. I think it's good mentally, physically. And other than that, I've experienced, just like Zach, in various parts of business, kind of putting my foot in the water, trying to get into that industry as a whole. So that's essentially me. But before all of that, I'm a believer in Christ, and I aim to show my belief every day without having to tell it. My goal is to tell people and spread the word, but for somebody to know that I follow Christ without me even having to say it.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to have you on here.
Thank you.
We used to work at Chick-fil-A, so we used to say my pleasure a lot, but it truly is genuinely a pleasure to have you back on here. My only a little bit, only right behind me in age, younger brother in Christ, and someone that I believe is going to go very far in life as far as goals,
Appreciate that.
aspirations, and trusting in God's will in your own life. So, a common question I'll ask on here would be what do you think, based on either your life experience or people that you know, or even statistics, would be some of men's greatest struggles right now?
I'm going to start with a big one. And honestly, I do believe that this is probably the biggest one. I would say lust. I would say most most hindrance in a man's life will be his lust, whether that be towards somebody he's in a relationship with, whether that be towards people he's not. I think it controls us in a lot of ways, especially ways we don't see. Um, a lot of our motivations are driven by lust. The desire for money not to help yourself or to help your family, but money to impress people is because of lust. A lot of men do things specifically because of their lustful desire for certain women. I think that's a big one.
Absolutely.
Redundancy, I think, is a huge thing, and that's not one that you would hear a lot. I think a lot of men have goals, and rather than set up to achieve those goals, they just set goals over and over. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. But when it's actually time to do the work to get there, most men fall. So that redundancy of taking the same path over and over before making their own or going down the one that God intended for them, I think is a huge issue. Satisfaction, I believe, is a huge issue. I think men, especially in today's time where we have a tendency to do things and become very, very proud of ourselves. The Bible talks against pride. And so we become satisfied. And a lot of times we will start a journey to get to a goal or a destination, and we'll hit the first benchmark. And rather than keep going and keep pushing, that pride
Absolutely.
takes over and we become satisfied. And then that's where you see a lot of people fall,
For
whether it
sure.
be in something that I've done for a while in fighting. You see a lot of people, they win the title, they win the belt, and then they stop training as hard and then they lose it. Um, that's a huge one. And that sort of leads into my next one, which is laziness. And it's a basic thing, but it is a massive problem in different ways. it's a lot more there's a bigger contrast, whereas today you have a lot of men who are very dedicated and will chase their goals, and on the other end, you have some who are completely lazy, no desire to achieve nothing, and oftentimes your laziest people will meet your most ambitious people, and they will become friends, and oftentimes people can bring each other down. But in the same way, people can bring each other up. And I think a lot of the problem is, as men, we tend to get lazy because of the things that we want to chase that tend to be secular are things that bring us down. It's no
Right.
it's no coincidence that usually when you're productive, it increases your prayer, it increases your Bible reading. Those things are associated with each other. Following God is associated with productivity, getting things done, being a man as a man should be. Whereas typically laziness tends to be associated with straying from God or following things that are not of Him. We think about laziness as associated with bad food. It's associated with pornography, which are all products of laziness, but also products of secularism.
Yeah.
That's a huge one. And then I think, like I touched on with redundancy, I think lack of humility is a very common trait. I think men will achieve things, especially in today's time with social media, and rather than do it for the good of others or do it for the good of society or for their family, their instant thing is to post about it or be want to be praised for it. Think about when a lot of people travel and the first thing they do when they get back is post the whole thing on social media for everybody to see, not because they
Yeah.
want to share their life or share it to their friends, but because they want people to be jealous. The biggest problem with the lack of humility is that is the problem that affects the people that could be making the change. Think about the people that could be making positive change in society. It will be the people that are accomplishing things. But if you have that lack of humility that is harming the people accomplishing things by bringing them down, bringing them away from God, the accomplishments tend to be things that are less benefitive or benefiting for everybody or for God, and they tend to be things that only benefit themselves. That's the problem with the lack of humility, in my opinion. It affects the demographic that does or could do the most positive change.
Right. And I think that would be the enemy's plan.
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you real quick on the I believe it was the third one that you said, like how men stop a lot, like they'll quit, they'll achieve one milestone and then they'll kind of either fall off or just like throw their hands up, like, okay,
Mhm.
can't do this anymore, or
Right.
at their first failure. Do you think that's a search for instant gratification? Do you think
I think
that's
so. Yeah.
I think it's fed a lot by our culture. What do you
Mhm.
think about that?
I definitely agree. Well, think about it like this. Like if I were to go on a diet and I were to hit all of my macros today, all of my calories, I might celebrate by having something sweet, or I might celebrate with a soda or a dessert. And just like that, I throw myself off a course. If
Yeah.
I go to the gym every day for a week and I'm proud of myself, a lot of people, their first instinct, oh, I should take a day off. And then that day off turns into 2 days off or 3 days off. I,
Yeah.
I think that it's a huge problem. And that instant gratification, you get to part one and then you don't stay till the end. You finish the chapter and then you don't finish the book because you're proud of yourself for finishing the chapter. Definitely, I think
Right.
instant gratification is a huge cause of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's like we have the whole world at our fingertips. Like I think that's part of it. But then also you don't have to wait for anything anymore in
Right.
the world.
Yeah.
You know, you can have like, and I know the intentions of these things like DoorDash, um, you know, the intention is convenience.
Yeah.
Grocery pickup at Walmart, the intention is convenience.
Mhm.
The intention is probably for, you know, disabled people, older people, things like that, women with a lot of children, and, you
Right.
know, maybe their husbands at work are not in the picture, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
Um, People that it's inconvenient to go in and shop or go in and do this,
Of
or with
course.
DoorDash, it's inconvenient for them to get out,
Yeah.
and it's meant for convenience, but it produces, you know, let me sit back, I don't have
Right.
to do this or that,
Yeah.
let me.
Definitely. I agree with that 100%, especially because it's I do think how you said certain things on the list of struggles are direct tactics by the enemy. I think that that is another example. The enemy will try to make your life as convenient as possible because that in turn will make you lazier. It will make you less productive. If I can DoorDash my food, a lot of people will struggle to go pick it up themselves. And then that it
Right.
drains you financially, but it also it just I think society as a whole is better when people have to go up and get things. And a lot of our modern society is being formed around taking that away. You know how we were talking with the instant gratification? A lot of people in old times, men would go to extraordinary lengths to impress a woman, to maybe have a wife, to have kids.
Yeah.
Think about, like World War II, World War One, we're painting like pictures of famous women, keeping it in our lockets, and then going off to war to go fight to do what we think will benefit society. That doesn't happen anymore because why go do that? Why go die overseas or why go build huge things? And when you could just, a lot of men will just fall to pornography where you can just have it instantly. You don't have to earn
Right.
things. You don't have to, why would you go through all the effort to cook a healthy meal, to cook you steak, potatoes, and vegetables when you could just DoorDash, Chick-fil-A?
Yeah, that actually brings me to a story. There was a woman one time, and this was actually one of my first thoughts. She had came through the drive-through, and she was just like she was in tears. Like she
Mhm.
was just man, she was having it out. And at this time, I was one of the team leads, and I had personally brought her out her food, and I believe we had messed something up. And I brought it out to her, and I seen that she was crying, and I couldn't help but ask. I said, "Are you okay?" Um, she said, I'm good. It's just been a long day. And I could tell it was one of those statements where it's like, no, it's been a long week. She's going through
Yeah.
something. Like it might have been a long month, might have been a
Yeah.
long year. It was you could really you could really tell that something was wearing down on her mentally and emotionally. And so I just stopped for a second and I was like, ma'am, could I pray with you really quick? And
Mhm.
I did. I did. She grabbed my hand and we prayed real quick. And I said, I hope your day gets better. And I said something along the lines of like, whatever you're going through, God's got you.
Mhm.
And I thought for a brief moment, if she had DoorDashed Chick-fil-A, where would that have been?
Yeah. That's
And I think
true.
a lot of times the enemy will try to block, if he knows based on context clues that someone is willing to shed the gospel, show God's love, or do
Mhm.
what's right in everyday life. He a lot of times will study that person and he will put things in the paths of people who will never reach that person and reach that gospel and that truth because he's either distracted them or made them conveniently choose a different option, a different route, or a different way to get their food, or whatever it may
Yeah.
be. It applies to a lot of
Mhm.
situations.
Yeah, that's a great story because you don't. Another thing I think it does is I think a lot of our modern systems like grocery delivery, food delivery, it makes us to where we don't interact with each other. That was something I liked about Chick-fil-A is to order at Chick-fil-A, unless you did it on the app. We didn't have those kiosks like you have at McDonald's. Like you walked up and you talked
Yeah.
to somebody and you connected with another human being. And that was something we prioritized, especially you being a team lead, was the connection with the guest. Because it's about more than just
And
the
they've got those a
food.
lot of places. They've got those at, I believe, Taco Bell now too. Like they've got those everywhere.
Yeah.
Those kiosks where it's so like non-interaction focused,
Yeah.
and it's meant for convenience, but there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah. Well,
Kind of like social media. There's pros and cons to social media. You can use it for greatness, or you can get things like OF.
right.
So,
Yeah.
um, I think there's pros and cons. It can be convenient to order on a kiosk if there's a long line. If there's a line of no people, and you step over there and you order on the kiosk, you type what you want into a machine.
Yep.
You're giving up an interaction with a person, and that
Hmm.
could be good. That could be bad. You might have just nearly ducked a curveball and that person was going to be super rude to you, but
Yeah.
the enemy might have used that, could have used that as a way to get you to not speak with someone that could have made your day better, and even shared a little bit of the gospel with you or
Yeah.
showed you that.
For sure. Do you remember um, when I believe it was when corporate was running the store during the little orientation sessions, they showed us that video, and it was for those of you who have never worked at a Chick-fil-A, a lot of you have seen this video. I've had orientations at a few Chick-fil-A's now, and they've showed us this video every time. It's about how much impact you as the employee can have on the guest. So I believe might remember it, Zach. It would show the person
Like it was
ordering,
yesterday.
yeah, and then it was oh, this person had this, like this person just got diagnosed with cancer, or this
Right. Like
person.
it was slow down on a customer and someone who was taking their order, and it would be like her mother just died. Um,
Mhm.
Aside from all the funeral planning and processing this brutal information, she's just now getting to get food for the day. This is her first meal and it's dinner time. It'll be a situation and it'll kind of
Yeah,
stop at various sections and show
yeah,
different stories. Like she was raised without her father in her life. She's been emotionally damaged from this other situation that was a result of that. Her mother's always wore it on her
mhm,
sleeve or like treated her differently because of it. She's away from the house for the first time in a long time and at Chick-fil-A with her friends, and
yeah. It's
you
it's
know,
it's huge, yeah, and
and it goes on the
especially
workers and the customers. It's everybody,
right.
even the
Mhm.
people working there, the people coming to get food or what have you, and just kind of really impacts that everyone has a story.
Yeah, and definitely, and it extends beyond just a workplace or a restaurant. Like, me and you getting on this call, I have, there could be things you're going through right now that I wouldn't know, or things that I would be going through that you'd have no idea about, or even somebody watching this and just hearing that conversation come up, or any conversation about it might change somebody's life. You never know what impact you can have on somebody in 30 seconds or 30 minutes or an hour. It's just
Yeah,
every second's valuable. And the enemy, from all the experience that I've ever had, the enemy doesn't create anything. What he does is he just takes things that either we create or God creates, and he will manipulate it. So kiosks at a restaurant might be created out of convenience to make it easier for employees, guests, everybody. But the enemy might manipulate that to take away an interaction. And that's how he does it.
absolutely.
He does it in inches. The devil has never in my life ever worked in miles. He works in inches. It might seem like he works in miles, but that's because you only notice it once it becomes a mile. He works in inches, he works in centimeters, and he will use those small methods, the ordering at the kiosk, the door dashing your food. And when you add all those things together, by the time you realize that he's got you, now you can always turn back to God, but it's about taking away the inches from the enemy before he can get them. It's about being proactive with it, for sure.
Right. It would be like if somebody really needed to be reached out by someone else, and the enemy is like, how can I make sure this doesn't happen? So they
Yeah.
wake up, they DoorDash their Dunkin' for the day. They get a sausage biscuit with it, and they get their coffee, and it's sent. They don't go out to even greet the DoorDasher. They just
Yeah.
it's like most people. You just want them to sit it down and leave.
Yep.
And they cook lunch. Then they go out later, get groceries. They pull into the grocery store and they do the pickup. Don't say a
Yep.
word to the person that brings their groceries out. They go into Planet Fitness, scan their thing real quick, and scurry off. Make sure I don't have an interaction with that person at the front desk. They
Mhm.
get their workout in quickly because it's packed that day.
Yep.
And they get out of there as fast as they can. They go home, they have dinner. And next thing you know, they haven't spoken to a single person all day. They've had possible interactions completely surrounding them, but the enemy has created a pathway where that was not possible, where
Yep.
that did not happen. That wasn't the outcome of any one of those particular situations. So, coming off of some of the greatest struggles for men and really just people in general, what have been your personal greatest struggles? And I did this on my podcast with Gino, and we each would list one, and we would go back and forth. So you'll list one, and then I'll list one, and
All
we'll
right.
go back and forth. I have mine listed out here, but as you do list out each one of yours, as you do list each one of yours, just try to briefly explain how you overcame them or what practical steps you would give someone else to overcome them.
All right. So, two out of my three are actually things that I listed with the overall struggles for men. So, my first one, and if you know me, you've probably experienced this with me, especially in the past. I've always had a lack of humility. Whenever I do things, I I'm a very talkative person. I'm a very social person. So the first thing I want to do is I want people to know, and that's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's a struggle I've always had, and it's caused me to become complacent about things. Um, it's definitely been a struggle, and I think the best way and the way that I've always used especially in the past year or so, to try and overcome that lack of humility is to just look around and I guess see people that are struggling, because when you see people in genuine struggle, it'll make you appreciate where you've come, not be proud of yourself for it. Of course, it's it's good to feel happy about the things you've done, but pride is an entirely different thing, and that's always where I've struggled, was with the lack of humility, the pride of it. I also think sometimes you just have to lose, and you have to lose bad.
Have
Um,
to be humbled by
yeah,
life's unexpected
yeah.
turns.
Lack of humility, I do think, is one of the things that there are a lot of issues that you will have to take the step and come to God for Him to step in on it. I do think lack of humility is one of those things that God will put you in your place eventually. But it is on you to make that happen where He doesn't have to really bring you down. And that was, I got fortunate enough. I got deep in my Bible, and I think that's one thing that helps with it is getting into the scripture and realizing that
Yeah.
we are not anything. Um, Nobody is. We would all be hell bound if it wasn't for what Christ did. And I do think it's good to try and make something out of your life. Give it a good reason. Of course, we were good enough reason for Christ to go down on the cross, but justify it. Like, try and make it something. Make yourself something. Make Him proud. Make Him proud, not yourself. And that was a mindset shift that helped me with it, was do it for Christ, not for myself. Look around, realize how blessed I am and not how good I am.
Yeah. So my first one was pride. And it's the exact same thing as yours. I think a lot of these struggles are relatively consistent from man to man across all generations, especially our generation in this day and age. But yeah, all in all, I think there's two ways you can go about it, two ways to overcome it. You either have to realize that it's there and take the possible steps through deepening your theological understanding and your closeness with God, or you absolutely will get cut down from that, and He will humble you, or allow you to be humbled rather. And yeah, it's similar. It's similar to Job, only Job didn't actually do anything to deserve that process. There was a separate context for that, but it would be like Job, God,
Yeah.
um, kind of backing up and like, okay, if you want if this is what you're asking for, you're making yourself your own idol, being prideful and arrogant. And here is what you deserve. Here's what that leads to: destruction. And you will be humbled. You will be cut down if it's not the case that you can realize and acknowledge that it's there and take the proper steps through the studying of God's word and His wisdom to correct that.
Yeah.
So, what would your second one be?
Another one I mentioned earlier, satisfaction has always been a big issue for me. How I went into detail about hitting one step and then stopping and appreciating yourself, and that's because I have been there and I have done that personally. Whether that be in work, school, the gym, uh, fighting, reading the Bible, is where I've honestly faced it the most. I've forever wanted to read the entire New Testament. It's something that I'm working on right now, getting through all of it. And so, finishing Matthew and being like, "Oh, awesome, I did this," and then not even getting into the first chapter of Mark. Um, Going to the gym, like I said, for a few days and then missing. I've struggled intensely with that, and the best way I can think of to overcome it, and what has helped me, is the just 5 minutes rule. Okay, I don't really feel like going to the gym today. Let me just go hit a couple sets and then I can leave. And what happens is you never actually end up leaving. You continue, because once you get started, your brain takes over and you want to finish it.
Right.
Um,
Once you
okay,
get over the I don't want to, like the childish
yeah,
idea of like, but I don't feel like it today.
hmm,
you know.
yeah, yeah. You start. All right, I'm like, okay, man, I'll just read a couple verses out of John, and then you finish the chapter, and then you learn, and you start taking notes, or you know, I don't want to. I really just would rather eat fast food than sit here and cook a whole meal. And so you drink a glass of water and you cut some fruit up, and then all of a sudden it's like, man, you know what? I can just cook a meal,
Right.
and
If you
then
can just bring yourself to take that first step.
right, yeah, definitely,
So it's not doing the whole thing, like taking the whole, like the entire step in the right direction, but just doing something inclined towards the right direction that will more than likely, more often than not, if you can bring yourself to be a motivated person, will motivate you in that right direction all the way. Just go
yeah,
ahead and take the full step after, a couple of baby steps in that direction. The second one off my list I'll name for myself personally was greed. So just wanting and desiring mainly success,
yeah,
mainly fame among other people for my own gain, and mainly money.
yeah,
So the greed, some of that kind of goes into pride, but a lot of it was money too. I wanted to be super wealthy. I
hmm
mean, who doesn't, right? Like that's
right,
no brainer. A
yeah,
lot of people,
hmm
Um, my biggest advice to get over that would be, I think it would kind of be the same to dig into scripture. That one's a tougher one to define because and I said this on my podcast with Gino. I told him, I said there are some parts about that there are some parts of my greed that didn't die until I got married. And then you
hmm
bury some of those boyish desires and you realize, when I want this, that doesn't mean I can have that
yeah,
necessarily right now. Or it was just a whole mindset shift of killing off all the desires that were only inclined towards myself and
hmm
learning that I'm now the head and provider of the household.
yeah,
And, above all that, I've got bills to pay.
yeah,
Separate from that, I've got bills to pay. So
yeah,
not every dollar do I get to spend on myself or my desires or what I want. And it's not all about getting more either. Sometimes some days it's just about being content with what you have and what you've been given, blessed with by God. And, whether it's through your hard work or any other area of life, it's
hmm
just about being humble about what you have and not always constantly wanting for more.
yep, 100%.
So what was your, that was my second one. So you'll be doing your third. So what would your third one be?
This my third, and it's my biggest one. I'd say relying on motivation is the number one killer for me of success. The habit of not wanting something or not doing something unless I want to, whether that be productive, in a physical sense, a mental sense, a spiritual sense. Um, Motivation, I feel like, is the biggest scam in the world. I think discipline is infinitely more important. Now, I think motivation is good in a certain way. I think motivation is a good reason to get disciplined. But if you ask somebody who's been to the gym consistently for 5 years and achieved a great physique and great health, they won't say, oh, I watch a motivation video every morning, which are good.
Right.
They'll say, I disciplined myself, I scheduled myself, I made it happen. It's discipline. And so for me, oftentimes, I like movies like for fighting. I'm a huge fan of the Rocky movies. I'm a huge fan of reading books, doing those things that make you want to go do it. But eventually that runs out. Always, 100% of the time, it will run out eventually. And I think where true success comes from and where true men are made are the parts where the motivation runs out and the want to runs out.
I agree.
When it's time to wake up at 5 a.m. and you're comfortable and you're satisfied and you're sleepy and you just want to sit there. That's where men are made. That's where, like the name of this,
In the uncomfortable.
that's
Yeah.
where the war happens. That's where the war forges you, whether it be the small war, the little battle of getting up and doing what you said you were going to do, or whether it be a fight, or whether it be getting bills paid. The small wars build up, and that's what I think makes men. And I think relying on motivation to get those things done is a very bad habit, and it's something that I've struggled with. Now, there's some motivation like when you're married, and it's okay, if I don't go to work, if I don't get this done, my wife's not going to eat. Those
Right.
types of things, that's motivation, but that should make you disciplined. That's what makes you like, all right, let's get up, let's get it done. put these hours in, whether it be on a job, whether it be on a business, whether it be on making yourself the man that everybody around you wants or expects you to be, the man God wants you to be. Relying on motivation for that is
Right.
dangerous, and I've always struggled with it. Like I can think April 13th this past year, I had a IKF tournament, and the night before, rather than watch film, rather than study what I should be doing, man, I turned on Rocky. Motivated myself rather than disciplined myself. I stayed up watching a movie to motivate myself for the fight the next day, which it was the day after my birthday, but still,
Right.
watched a movie to motivate myself for a fight rather than get to bed on time to get up and get in the right mindset. It's those small motivations. And honestly, what helps me with that is when I get motivated, the first thing I do is build the system, and then you just have to force yourself to do it. If I get up
It's
and I
all about
hate it
that
afterwards, I
discipline.
won't. Yeah, because you go to the gym and it sucks when you walk in the door most times. But then
Yeah.
that's when you get the best workouts and you walk out and you're like, I'm so glad I went. So honestly, the best way to overcome the relying on motivation is to use that motivation to build your discipline and then just get your foot in the door. As long as you get
Yeah.
your foot in the door, most times that masculine urge, if you have it, which you should as a man, will kick in and you'll get it done.
Yeah, I'm definitely a huge supporter of like valuing discipline over motivation. Absolutely, because motivation doesn't carry the weight when you don't feel like it. It just
Yep.
doesn't. Some days you
Hmm.
just can't get motivated, and there has to be a discipline there if you want to be successful in reaching your goals and even reaching God's will for your life. Um, my third and final one, and again, this is my top three greatest struggles um, throughout life and throughout my growth into being a man would be lust. And this
Mm.
is super super consistent across the board. Men of
Yeah.
all age groups, especially men in our age group or in
Yeah.
our age bracket. The two things, and I'm gonna kind of restate what I said in my video with Gino because this is truly what I did is if you can learn to replace that urge with something else, if you can kind of fill that void with something
Mhm.
different to help to keep your mind off of that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Um, but the greatest help for me personally would be to dig into a Bible story about this topic.
Yeah.
Find some biblical character that you can relate yourself to that fell into lust. That
Mhm.
way,
Yeah.
when that girl walks by you at the grocery store, you're in your head automatically, just like clockwork. David and Bathsheba, David and Bathsheba,
Yep.
over and over and over again. That was my personal story that I was like, that. I'm not
Yeah.
going to do that.
Yep.
And not, not necessarily his actions exactly, but to succumb to lust similarly on a moral level in the way that David did. And
Yeah.
so I think that was my most powerful tool. Obviously, that would go back to staying in the Word. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do as men.
Yeah.
But to have a specific story about certain situations that you can relate yourself to and not want to slip up and truly learn from the men of the Bible
Yeah.
is one of the more important things that I've experienced in my life to take the proper steps and avoid messing up in certain areas. Um,
Mhm.
and I didn't know if you know it, but that's why I have a growing series here on YouTube called Men of the Bible, learning from their
Mhm.
mistakes, their strengths, their weaknesses, and things like that.
I
So
tuned in, Zach.
that was a huge drive for me doing that. Is
Yeah.
see a certain thing on social media, keep scrolling, David and Bathsheba, over and over again
Yeah.
until you
Oh,
almost don't
definitely.
like hearing you say to yourself in your own head, David and Bathsheba. Those names get annoying to you. So then it's just like a click. You don't even have to say it mentally anymore. You're just like, I'm not even going to say it. I'm just not going to look. So I'm not even going to think about it because I don't want to say David and Bathsheba in my head again. So
Yeah.
it's all a part of that discipline. Speaking about biblical characters, there is a wide variety of biblical characters and there's a wide variety of men to learn from. I wanted to ask you what biblical character have you been able to relate to the most throughout your growth as a man?
There are a lot of times where God has reached out and wanted me to come to Him, And rather than look at him and keep walking, I've looked down at the water. There's a lot of times where God has told me to be calm and to be peaceful, and I've grabbed the sword and cut somebody's ear off. 100%. There have been times where I should have brought Jesus' name up. I know for a fact I've never denied being a Christian. I'm proud of it. But there are times where I've just stayed silent. I definitely say more than 3 times I've denied Christ. So I would say, without a
Even if
doubt,
even if through actions rather
yeah,
than
just
words.
doing things that aren't of Him.
Your
I would say
answer is
100% Peter.
your answer is also my answer.
Yeah.
It's all about that doubt. And like you said, not even necessarily verbally denying Christ, but even just through your actions. I think that your actions can deny that you are a follower of Christ day in and day out, probably more than 3 times if you let
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I'm 100% there with you. Peter is mine as well. He walked with Jesus. He saw Jesus teach. He saw the work of Jesus. You and I,
Yeah. Mhm.
raised in church, we both have family that have been pastoral guidances to so many people in our
Yep.
lifetime. We have seen so much work, from our fathers, from the men before us to set the example.
So,
Yet, we still fell into our selfish desires at one point or another, and we realized our need for that transformation. So I would
yep.
completely understand the answer is Peter, and I think we're definitely in the same boat as far as why we relate to
100%.
Peter. I will tell you this analogy that my grandfather told me. It's been some time now, but he told me that for a long time, people would see bad apples come off of trees that would have wormholes in them, and they'd be frustrated. Like, okay,
Mhm.
well, a worm worked its way into this apple, but actually, the seed in which the apple was planted had microscopic eggs from the worm in it from the very beginning. And as it grows and grows and grows, the worm also grows within it. And
Mm.
the worm actually eats its way out. And a lot of times, this is how us men work out. We have a natural proclivity to sin, and it starts small and it grows and grows and grows until it eventually works its way out of us to destroy us. Or we submit to Jesus Christ to actually subside that.
Mhm.
So,
Oh, that's amazing. That's a great analogy.
a little bit off topic, but
Yeah.
I thought that would be just another one. That's an analogy I'll bring up for until probably the end of my life because my
Yeah.
grandfather has passed that analogy, that illustration down to me. But yeah, I definitely see why Peter. I definitely see why Peter.
Mhm.
And I didn't expect that. I don't know what I did expect, but I think I didn't expect us to have the same answer. But when you
Yeah.
started explaining and getting more into it, I could understand.
Yeah.
And down to walking on the water, down to the denial, so many different times, even if it's through our actions, down to what the real meaning of those stories are. I'm there. I'm 100% there with you. But then, Christ is pointing Peter to something very important there at the end.
Yeah. Definitely.
And he's like, I have a purpose for you.
Oh
I
yeah, for sure.
have I have a meaning for your life. And obviously we can relate to that as well because I believe we've both found our true purposes. And I think that just puts the bow on top of why it's Peter. It's got to be Peter.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a huge importance as a man is to find the person that you relate to. And I think for women too, I think it is beneficial for everybody to know that person in the scripture, in the Bible that you can relate to. So you can see what they did. Like, Peter, of course, um, denied and then later in his life was martyred and sook after that redemption for how he had denied Christ. There's actually a cool thing I'd like to bring up if we have time.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody in the world, whether that be Christian, atheist, uh, people that follow Islam, people that are Jewish, people that are Buddhist, everybody that has ever existed on this world can fit into one of 4 categories. You have your very spontaneous and daring people. We're going to give it a color, let's say orange. You have your orange people who are very spontaneous, who are very daring, who want to be the center of attention. You have your, let's say, gold people. These people are very organized. They're very structured. Everything happens in a routine manner. This is how it goes. Then you have your greens. These are your people that ask questions. They want to be the smartest person in the room. They want to have the knowledge. Then let's say blue. These are your compassionate, caring, loving people. If you think about it right now, Zach, and anybody watching this, everybody you know fits into one of those four categories. They might have little bits of both. They might have two
Right.
that are very high, or they might be very predominant in one. Zach, you are a very gold person to me. Your
Which one was
structure,
gold? Oh,
you're
structured and
very
organized.
structured, or you're organized.
I could see that.
You have your podcast,
I
but
was
also
stuck between the middle two.
yeah, definitely.
Whenever you were explaining, I was stuck between the middle two. Like
Yeah,
I read 12 books last year, just seeking
yep,
knowledge, seeking wisdom, approaching the
yeah,
wedding. Man, I was so nervous.
yeah. Oh yeah.
What were you gonna say?
It's actually, you can find it as a personality test, and I highly suggest that you try it. It's called True Colors. Um, you can take it, and it'll give you a very accurate perception. But you can also use this to interact with people. Um, I myself, I took it. I was very, very green, with a little bit of gold. Um, but we each have bits and pieces of it. Like I have an orange where normally I'm not very spontaneous, but when it comes to fighting, I'll take a match with anybody.
Right.
Um, or if there's a huge roller coaster, I'll definitely ride it. There's definitely parts of us that fit each one. But the reason this
Is it
is
like
so
a pie
important,
chart that it gives you at the very end? Like
sort
a
of, yeah.
breakdown?
It's a numerical analysis. So what you do is it'll give you questions, and you'll say from 4 to 1, this is most like you, least like you, and you can take it, and whichever one is your highest number will be your highest category, and your lowest will be your lowest. I was green, then gold, then orange, then blue was actually my last, which was kind of surprising. But I can see a little bit of blue in you, Zach. When
What was the
when
blue
somebody
again?
really, very compassionate, very loving, caring. When you
I try.
have something that when you talk about Anna, I hear your blue. When you talk about Gino, I hear your blue. Sometimes when you talk to me, I can hear that blue too. But it's important because it's weird that God gave everybody one predominantly of these four traits, or maybe God created these four concepts, but
Right.
God also created four gospels. Now I want you to think about the gospels. Let's start with the first chronological. Let's think about Matthew. Well, what was Matthew? Matthew was a tax collector. He was structured, he was
Structured,
organized.
organized.
How did he write his gospel? It starts with the genealogy, and it goes, this happened, this happened, this happened. How did he organize his gospel? He didn't organize it chronologically, he organized it by events. The miracles were together, the genealogy was together. He put everything organized. So, if I'm a gold
I
person and
hadn't
I'm very
realized
structured
that.
and organized, which gospel would I probably take the best to? Matthew.
Probably
Let's
Matthew.
think about Mark. Who did Mark draw heavy inspiration from writing his gospel? He drew inspiration from Peter. He took direct accounts from Peter. What do we know about Peter? He chopped the soldier's ear off. He was the one that volunteered to come out onto the water. Peter was spontaneous. He was a heavy influence on Mark writing his gospel. So who would the orange person want to read? Mark. It's very spontaneous, very daring. Let's think about Luke. Luke was a doctor. Luke does not focus necessarily on the emotional aspect of it, of who Jesus was. Luke writes his gospel like a textbook. This happened. This is why it happened. This is where it happened. Luke is about the details. So if I'm a green person and I want to know what happened, when it happened, Luke. That leads us to John. John was so compassionate and so loving and so caring about Jesus personally that his gospel is in its own category separate from the other three. John was very blue. If I want to know why Jesus was the way he was, if I want to know who he was, I'm going to turn to John.
Right.
Matthew, Mark, Luke tell us what Jesus did. John tell us who he was. So there's a gospel that will fit each person. And I think that God did this intentionally. Now, do I think God was thinking of John as a blue person, Mark is an orange person? Obviously
Right.
not.
Right.
But
Obviously not specifically.
yeah,
And he's also,
God,
obviously the intention wasn't like maybe I'm more of a green person. Don't only read what would probably be
right.
best suited, but that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. For sure. Like if I'm not sure, or even if I'm a struggling Christian, even if I identify as a Christian and I just don't read my scripture, if I'm a blue person, I will probably take more from John. If I'm a green person, I'll probably take more from Luke. I will very likely take more knowledge from a writing that is somebody like me. Zach, when me and you
Right.
talk, I get a lot from you because we are similar in a lot of ways. You learn from what is similar from you, and everybody has a style that they learn in. And that style that they learn in is very often tied directly to their personality. So it's beautiful that God gave us gospels that can fit any type of person, and it truly does take away any excuse to not read. Now, I understand some people, there's countries you can't get a Bible, but
Right.
the gospel is written for everybody to have, to take, to understand, and it lies in us to do that. But the colors, the personality is also great because Zach, you're a very structured, organized person. If I try to talk to you in a way that is overwhelmingly emotional, you might not understand that as well as you would understand if I were just to give you everything organized and laid out.
Right.
The same way, if there was
I
somebody who,
definitely agree with that on a personal level with family, with
oh
my
yeah,
wife. If it's presented to me as an emotional appeal during an argument, or I mean, I can let someone vent to me, but if it's any sort of like back and forth or conflict, an emotional appeal is probably not the best with an organized person
yeah,
like myself. I can
yeah,
definitely see what you're saying there.
yeah, and it'll have an impact. So, yeah, definitely. If your thing, forget the colors. If you're a very loving, emotional person, you should read John. If you want to know the facts, what happened, read Luke. And I think knowing that and knowing the correlation between these gospels can really help you identify somebody to tie us back to the question that made me think of this. If I'm very similar to John, I will learn from John very well. If I'm very similar to Luke, I'll
Right.
learn from Luke very well. So I think
Or
it's very
or at
important.
least be the most hooked by that as a
Right.
starting point.
Yeah. And then
Right.
help that to understand the other gospels or to get into Paul's writings. It'll show you where you could start, get your foot in the door. Like we were talking about with the discipline, just get your foot in the door. Okay, I'll probably understand this better than I might understand this. Um, just get in, start. That's all you got to do is start. And usually God will carry you through the rest of the way. He'll stick his hand out. You just have to grab it. So I think that's a great question. And I think it's very good to know as a man which person in the Bible, even if it's not, of course, somebody that wrote the gospel, any of the gospels, of course, me and Zach's wasn't. Just knowing that it can help you, or like what you said, Zach, with lust, thinking about, okay, King David,
Right.
it can ground you very quickly.
Yeah. And he was so hard not to, like, he had such moments of power and then he had such moments of weakness. It's like, how do you
Yeah.
not? Not that he's my most relatable character in the biblical writings, but he might be a close second. He in my life has given Peter a run for his money as far as
Yeah.
relatability in my own
Mhm.
life. I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. When do you think, based on personal experience or real world knowledge or what have you, where do you think that most men sabotage themselves? Where do you think that most men sabotage themselves?
I would say looking at the destination and not looking at the journey. In life, there will be so many things that we will aim for. And on the path to get there, we will look at the end destination. Imagine if Paul, on the road to Damascus, was just trying to get there and not focus on anything else.
Right.
Sometimes the most impactful things we have will be on the way to somewhere. Because oftentimes, to be honest, the view from the mountain doesn't equate to the hike to the top. My girlfriend, for example, Dakota, she she loves to hike. She's actually hiked Mount Whitney. It's the highest mountain in the contiguous United States, and the peak is amazing. But looking back down at the journey is typically the sweetest part. And so I
Right.
think as men, oftentimes we will sabotage ourselves by focus on the destination when most of the most life changing moments happen along the way there. If I said a go the like we've used the gym analogy the whole time on this show. Um, if I start from January 1st to New Year's Eve, and I set a goal to go to the gym every year, it's usually not on the last day that I'll feel the impact of it. It's along the way. It's when you wake up sore in the morning, that's where the change truly happens.
Right.
And so I feel like by only worrying about where you're trying to get to, you will sabotage yourself because you will not learn the lessons that are so impactful along the way. My dad is a pastor, recently ordained a little bit over a year ago, November 2024. And I promise you, if you were to ask him right now, if you asked him about any of the defining moments in his walk with God, I would doubt that any of them have probably come since he's been ordained. Of course, you grow oftentimes, but the most impactful moments were the day you put the bottle of alcohol down, uh, the day you give it to him when you're fight in lust, uh, the day you put those things down along the journey, not the destination, not when you've been a year sober. That's not where it comes. It comes the day you put it down. It comes the day you see the change. And so I think by focusing on the result of the change and not the change itself, focusing on the destination instead of the journey, men will sabotage themselves because you will forget why you're truly doing the things you're doing. If you focus on, like I mentioned earlier, my goal of reading the entire New Testament and eventually reading the entire
Right.
Bible, if I focus on just getting to Revelation chapter 22, then what about the letters to the Corinthians? What about
Right.
John? What about all of those
If
things that
that's
you'll
your
miss out
sole,
on?
if that's your sole focus and obsession, you'd miss out on a lot of details if you were, spending a lot of your time like, I got to hurry up and knock this out. Yeah, I definitely
Yeah,
understand. I definitely understand what you're, and even relate to what you're speaking about for sure.
yeah,
Or it's
definitely.
just that end goal, that tunnel vision, um,
Yeah.
directly postured to exactly what you're aiming at, rather than the progress, the work, and the discipline it'll take to get there. I actually had a question regarding discipline that I believe you answered a bit earlier, but more specifically, how would you stay disciplined or how do you recommend that others stay disciplined when no one is watching and there's no applause, there's no instant reward, no instant gratification, and things of that nature?
You can't do it for yourself. And that's a big thing because if I set a goal and I want to do this for me, if I want to buy a house at the end of the year and I want to do that for me, when you get in the trenches and you get to the moments where no one sees, you will give yourself forgiveness. You will pat yourself on the back. It's okay. You don't have to. But if I'm trying to buy a house for my wife, if I'm trying to read my Bible for him and not for me, if I'm trying to do these things for somebody else, typically, even if they're not watching, you will have that motivation. As a man, we are called by God to be the least selfish people because men build societies, men build infrastructure. We are providers, biologically created by God to be providers. And so our motivation should never be ourselves. The person we want to impress should never be ourselves. You can't do it for yourself because you will excuse yourself anytime it gets difficult. Do it for God, do it for the people you love, no matter what it is, even if it's something that would really only benefit you in a lot of ways, like, going to the gym and getting in shape, that will benefit other people. Think about it rather than thinking I need to get shredded because I want to look great.
Yeah.
Think about it as my girlfriend, my fiance, my wife. She needs me around. She needs me healthy. Do it for her. Do it for other people so that when you have to look in the mirror, you can say, okay, I might excuse myself, but God's not excusing me from this. He's not letting me go on it. I need to read my Bible. I need to go to the gym. I need to stay in shape. I need to go get the work done. And like we were talking about earlier, it's just starting 5 minutes. Do it for 5 minutes, and oftentimes you'll carry yourself the rest of the way. It's uh it's an important part. I've been reading this book recently. It's called Atomic Habits. It's actually very popular. You've probably heard of it.
I've got it on my
And
shelf. I have yet to read it though.
it's amazing. And one of the core idea of the book is, you have to start with the smallest thing, making your bed. The very small details will add up. And the reason it's called Atomic Habits is, atomic means very small, but it also means something that can expand very quickly. Um, Building those habits will oftentimes give you exponential growth and not linear growth. Linear growth hardly gets anywhere. Exponential growth is what does the change. When you think about a graph, if it's an exponential function, it rises like that. If it's linear, it just rises like this. It rises slow and steady. And slow and steady is good, but slow and steady can sometimes turn into that. So it's the small
Yeah.
things, the small disciplines, okay, no matter what, every morning I'm going to make my bed. Nothing will stop that. You'll get that down, and eventually there won't be a day that you don't do it. Then it becomes to, okay, every day I'm going to make my bed, and then I'm going to wipe my desk. And then it starts and it expands and then it
Right.
expands. And the exponential part, it starts slow. The exponential graph will always start slower than the linear graph. It'll be lower at the beginning. But once that exponential graph starts to rise, once your habits start to spread into the rest of your
Yeah.
life, your growth will be unrecognizable. You'll
Next thing you
become,
know, you got, 15
yeah,
minutes of scripture and prayer in the morning, and then you're going to the gym before bed, you're working better, you're doing better, your
yeah,
relationships look better. Yeah, I can understand that for sure. And it all starts with those small habits for sure.
yeah, definitely. And it's often the things that you do when no one's watching. Usually, there's not somebody standing in your room. I mean, unless you're married and you share a room, but there's nobody standing there watching you make your bed or telling you to do it. If you're just dating somebody, if you don't live with the person you're dating, or if you live with roommates, your roommates ain't gonna walk in there and say, "Hey, man, make your bed." Your girlfriend, your friends, your parents, if you live away from home, they're not gonna text you in the morning, "Make your bed." But it's doing it. Do something that nobody sees, and then you will do other things that nobody sees. It's about starting small, just like we said.
To get to the next question, because I've got some questions written down here, and I just wanted to make a list of things that I didn't want to miss at all. What comforts did you personally have to kill off in order to grow into your calling?
This is a weird type of comfort, and it's probably not something conventional. I tend to only be comfortable in things that I know I'm very good at. Not just good at,
Right.
very good at. For example, when I go to the gym, the first thing I want to do is hit the heavy bag. I know how to do that. I'm good at that. I'm comfortable doing that. There are certain machines, certain workouts. It's like, my max isn't very high on that.
And squats and not too much.
Maybe not. So I don't want to do that.
Right.
I want to hit the bag. But the problem is, if I only hit the bag, sure, I'm very good at it. I can throw hands, but what happens when I have to lift something? What happens
Right.
when I have to do this? What if I have to put something on my shoulders and carry it? The biggest comfort I've had to kill is, for a long time, I would never want to do something if I knew that I couldn't be the best at it.
I feel like I remember this before you
Yeah,
before you had matured so much as you have now. I feel like I remember this.
yeah. I used to never, if there was a fight, if I was going to spar somebody and I didn't think 100% that I could give them the work, no, I used to always be like that. If I couldn't be the most ripped, jacked bodybuilder on the whole planet, why touch a weight? And those are things that affected me severely. And it's rooted in a good cause to want to be the best at something. It's prideful, but it will drive you to success if you view it the right way. I want to be the best at it that I can be. And that's ultimately the change I had to make to kill that comfort. My mindset for a very long time was, why do it if I can't be the best at it? And I've had to shift that into, let's see if I can be the best that I can be at it. I maybe can't be better than everybody,
Right.
but I can be better at it in a month than I am at it now.
It's
And
a
that's helped me with a
it's a
lot of
healthy
things,
goal rather than an unhealthy obsession.
and
And
an
that
egotistical
yeah,
goal.
for sure. And that can actually affect a lot of lives, like, or that could affect a lot of different areas of life. Like if you look at your effectiveness of spreading the gospel, and somebody
Yes.
just so happens to have a couple thousand subscribers and they're spreading the gospel on a daily basis, and you think, I'll never reach their level. They're doing it. They're reaching people.
Yeah.
Let me just sit back. Let me sit
Right.
back. You got it.
Yeah.
And if you can't be the best at it, that seems like a very masculine thing to struggle with. That seems like a
Yeah.
very I don't necessarily personally relate to that, but I've seen that a lot in one of my brothers, and I can
Yeah.
definitely see how that would affect other areas of your life, and that could hold you back from a lot of growth, a lot of progression
Yeah.
in some
Definitely.
of life's most important areas. um, on the topic of that being a very masculine thing to struggle with, and I feel like that happens in a lot of men. How would you define masculinity? What does manhood? How is that defined?
Getting back up. Um, we've discussed this, me and you personally. Think about all of the strongest men, whether it be biblically, whether it be in movies. Oftentimes, there is something that will knock them down, that will beat them up. And the moment you become that man is when you get back up. We even mentioned it earlier on the podcast. That's where men are made. I think the definition of masculinity would be to provide, but to get back up. And I guess the part I would put in quotations would be to keep fighting.
Right.
Think about the movies, think about the Bible, think about Peter. Peter was knocked down by himself, granted, but knocked down, got back up. Even Jesus, think about Jesus was put on a cross, and they never truly had Jesus down.
Right.
He was maybe standing in the corner for a little bit by his own will, but they put him on a cross, was killed, and got back up in 3 days. And I think
It's the
all of Christ,
representation is what you're
right? Yeah,
inferencing.
definitely. Yeah, obviously,
Yeah.
we can't resurrect
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
dead, but I do think Jesus's entire life was meant for us to be a blueprint to follow. And when you look at the very last thing he did was he got back up. And obviously we could never do anything like that. Jesus is Lord, he is God, and he did something that no man could do, no woman could do, anybody could do. But the representation of that to keep fighting like Peter did, like Paul did. Paul was a sinner. He was a murderer. He was a genocider of Christians. And even if it wasn't necessarily him getting, obviously Jesus didn't meet him on the road to Damascus and punch him onto the ground, but he was in a evil low spot and he got back up. In the same token, you might be a good Christian man who provides for your family and you might lose your job. The masculine thing to do is to pull yourself up. Nobody's coming to save you. Save yourself.
Right.
God will help you save
Continue on
yourself.
as best you can.
Right. God's only going to give to you. God is loving. Christ is loving. But true love is not just giving everything. True love is showing you how to earn it, how to work for it, whether that way to work for it be just reading scripture or whether it be clocking in every day. True
Right.
masculinity is getting back up when you've been knocked on the ground, no matter how bad you got hit. Like I mentioned earlier with the movies on the motivation category, man, Rocky. All the fights,
It's that
Rocky
scene
gets
from
knocked down,
Rocky Balboa. It's
stands back
probably the
up,
worst.
keep fighting.
Yeah. You know the scene I'm talking about there's a scene in Rocky Balboa, and it's one of the worst movies. One of the worst
Yeah, the
movies
Mason, the
of
Lion, Dixon.
but the one scene, there's the one scene he says it's not about how hard you get hit, or no.
Uh,
He said it's not about how hard you can hit, but about how hard you can get hit and keep moving
keep
forward,
moving
about how much you
forward,
can
man.
take and keep moving forward.
Yeah, that's life.
At the very end, you're better than that.
Mm,
And that's exactly what
yeah.
God does. He a lot of times will allow you, I believe, to be served with situations that are too much for you to handle. I think a common misconception that people find, I don't know where they find it. I guess they just kind of say it. Um, but that God won't allow you to go through more than what you can handle. Yes, he will. He absolutely
Yeah.
will. There's a verse.
Mm-hmm.
It says, God will never allow you to be tempted more than what you can bear. And if so, he will provide a way. He'll make a way out. I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
but that's the basics.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the misconception is. But God will absolutely allow you to go through more than you can handle, or else why would you ever need to fall back on his provision, his guidance, and rely on him in submission? So that I can't believe how widespread that misconception has been, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not true. It's not a core tenet of the faith. God will absolutely allow you to go through more than you can handle for the building of your character and
Yep.
for the purpose of you forming a greater reliance on his power.
Yep.
And I really love what you said. When you learn how to have that emotional and mental resilience, even the metaphors we're using throughout the Rocky movies and various other movies, that
Mm-hmm.
physical resilience, those are really messages that hit you right here and right here, because you have to
Yeah.
learn how to mentally and emotionally keep moving forward. And I do believe it would be a good masculine trait to have. I definitely agree with you
Yeah.
there. My definition on masculinity would be similar to yours. I would say I think it would be threefold. It'd be service to others, whether that's providing or just a general service, just helping people. Service to others, maintaining order in your home or even within your
100%.
own mind, if you can maintain
Hmm.
order, and emotional resilience. That's the three that I would give.
Yes.
So if I can learn to help and serve others, that is one of my greatest and most core purposes as a man on this earth. I will never go, or almost never go, a day without wondering if I truly step into that role. I'll almost never go throughout a day without helping someone or without giving some piece of advice or helping someone load their
Mm.
groceries up, opening the door for someone, and being kind to other people. If
Mm.
I can learn to be emotionally resilient, I can learn to do exactly like what you were saying, make it through life's battles, learn how to think logically about situations. And it's not okay to constantly and forever bury your emotions, but sometimes it is completely necessary that you are needed to put them on the back burner or set them aside or make a
Yeah.
decision in despite your emotions. And
Yeah.
there's been situations, whether it be in my family, in my marriage, or whatever situation life presents me, there will be situations where I believe a lot of men, if capable, are would be the person that would be needed, and it would be necessary for them to think logically and just hold on to the emotions for just a minute. We're not saying don't be emotional. We're not saying act like you don't have feelings and just be a robot, but we're saying there are many situations in life where that is not the most important thing. And sometimes you just have to wait and be patient
Yeah.
and talk it out, feel what you need to feel, cry it out later, vent to your wife, do what you need to do. But sometimes you have to make decisions despite how you feel.
Yeah.
And then the third would be order. If you can maintain order within your own self, if you can learn to, not feed too much into your anger, not feed too much into your sadness or anxiety or whatever it may be, you will be a more complete person. If you can learn to effectively maintain order in your household or in your marriage, you are a true natural born leader. If you can learn to do that, it will help you step more into that natural leadership role where if a situation strikes you and your wife, or even just yourself on an individual level, or your family, your kids, there is a process to solve that problem or to aid everyone else throughout that tough time, in which it is my job, I believe personally, through a Christian worldview, to maintain order in this household.
Hmm.
So if I can
Definitely.
more effectively learn to do that, I become much better of a man. My wife can rely on me a lot better. And I believe that makes me, or helps make me and forge me into the man that God has called me to be.
100%. That's good.
So, what do you think of this toxic masculinity mess?
Don't even get me
I'm
started.
going to throw
So,
you a curveball. I'm going to throw you a curveball here in a
so
minute because I was speaking to someone about it just the other day.
yeah, so I think the whole concept behind toxic masculinity, I think it's very rooted in men scared to be men, or men that want to reap the benefits of being a man, but they don't want to do what it takes. And so oftentimes you'll look at people who are doing what you have to do. You have to take up, you have to pull yourself up, you have to get to work, and you have to do these things. But because of that, the Bible calls men to be leaders. The Bible calls us to take charge, to run the household, to do what it needs to do. So to call that toxic, or this concept that traditional masculinity is a toxic thing, it's rubbish.
Well,
It's
and
it's
and on that note, if me and my wife believe that a man or a husband or whatever, if we have a definition of what masculinity really is under our belief system, how would somebody from a different belief system be able to tell us that was toxic? Because it's not like that would be like if someone believed in polygamy and they had a three-person, they believed that it was morally acceptable to have a three-person marriage, a love triangle, if you will. It would be like me telling them that's immoral. That's immoral.
Yeah.
They could easily say back to me, no, it's not immoral for us. We are atheists. We don't necessarily believe, or agnostics. We don't necessarily believe in a higher power. You're telling us that that is immoral through a Christian ethic. We don't
Yeah.
follow Christian ethics. So how could someone possibly tell me that the way that my household family or the way that my life as a man operates is toxic masculinity or immoral if they are operating from a different framework? So I was speaking to someone the other day and I kind of told them different situations where people use the term toxic masculinity. And I said, in this situation, why would you call it toxic masculinity then? That already has a word. That's called misogyny. Why would you call it toxic masculinity? There's
Yeah.
already a word for that.
Right.
This is abuse of power. There was another word. It's like there's already a word for that. So why did we create this term? True masculinity, I don't believe, can be toxic. If you look at all of my core tenets of what I believe masculinity is, an extreme version of all of those isn't necessarily toxic, or it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
make the masculinity toxic. I just wanted to dig into your thoughts a little bit about that and kind of give you my take. I haven't really spoke about that on the internet before, or on the channel at least. So I guess my final question for the day in closing to you would be: what moment in your life truly forged you into the man you are today? Because that's our purpose here on this channel, is how to forge yourself into the man that God made you to be.
So this is deeply significant to me. There are a bunch of events that have happened in life that slowly shape you, but the one defining moment was actually very recently. April 13th, I mentioned earlier, I had a tournament. April 13th, 2025, in Murfreesboro, there was an IKF Muay Thai tournament. I was in the finals round for my weight class. I was fighting a welterweight, which in Muay Thai is different than MMA. But my opponent was the arguably the best combat athlete in Tennessee for the IKF, in my weight class and my age range. And we were in the final round. His name is Devontae Rainey. Um, he has a reasonable amount of height on me, and I've been in this situation before. I have been in combat with people that are bigger than me, that are taller than me, that are better than me. Um, we were in the final round. I'd won the first round, and second round had given up, or had lost. We were in the third round, and my dad was in my corner, which of course is a man that's deeply telling when your father's in your corner.
That's like 10
And
plus 10 strength points immediately.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And he had just become a pastor a few months prior, and one of his things he always says in terms of the walk with Christ is just be a soldier, keep fighting, Peter. Just keep going as a soldier. And I looked at my dad. It was the third round, and I was getting it handed to me. I'd eaten probably 30 knees to the head at this point in the clinch. I looked at my dad. He looked at me, and he saw it on my face. I was ready to give up. And he looked at me just like this, and he yelled as loud as he could. He said, "Soldier." And I heard at that moment not him telling me to knock this guy out, not telling me to win the fight. I felt my dad look at me and just say, "Believe." It felt like, "Believe. He's
Right.
got you."
You are not
And just
done.
keep going.
Right.
That's not you. Like, you're better than that. And I walked forward, and I got the crap kicked out of me, but I kept walking forward. And at that moment, I honestly proved to myself that there is nothing truly that will ever keep me down as long as God's on my side. I might get knocked down, I might get put on my butt, but nobody's going to keep me there. Even when I breathe my last breath and I die, I'm going somewhere.
Right.
There's nothing that's going to keep me down. And it was that moment that I felt that masculinity, and it was just like, go soldier.
Right.
So that would be
Well,
my moment.
that's awesome. Um, that's actually great. I hadn't heard that story just yet. I do know about some of your previous fights, but I hadn't heard that story, and that's like that would be like the big movie moment. That's awesome.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Um,
I could feel the camera getting the shot in the background.
right, right. Um, Well, brother, it was a pleasure to have you on. Like I said, I know we used to say that all the time, but I genuinely mean it. It genuinely is a pleasure to have you here. You are like a little brother to me, even though the age gap is not very significant. I'm glad that we, covered all the topics that I would have liked to cover today. And you're welcome back anytime, of course.
Awesome. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate it.
Hope you have a wonderful day, and it was wonderful to have you on.